Hi, welcome to Conversations with the ImisiOluwa. I am the ImisiOluwa, and it's such a good pleasure to have you listen and watch Conversations with the ImisiOluwa right now. Today I'm talking about men. It was International Father's Day a while ago, and June is Men's Mental Health Awareness Month. So I thought that I would just share a thought that I've always had, especially as it comes to this demand for emotional vulnerability from men. And there's been that increasing call and cry for men to become more emotionally vulnerable, and it's a good thing. But I think that there should also be some context, or there should be some understanding to it, which is what I'm going to talk about. The catchphrase that captures this demand is that men cry also. It's okay for men to cry, and all of that. And it has both direct and implied meanings. First, it is to say that men ought to allow themselves to be emotionally vulnerable. Men ought to allow themselves to express their emotions. This assumes that many men hide their emotions, bottle things up, or think that expressing themselves emotionally is a sign of weakness, and that's a true assumption. So that catchphrase seeks to encourage many more men to allow themselves to be emotionally vulnerable, and then to understand that it actually takes strength to express yourself emotionally or to be emotionally vulnerable, of course within certain contexts of relationship, marriage, friends, family, and all of that. Secondly, it is to connote the type and the kind of expression. It's not that men do not express their emotions at all. That's not the case. I see angry men all the time. I see sad, happy men. I see men every now and then, express their emotions when their football team loses or wins. So yeah, it's not that men do not express their emotions, but that there are certain types of emotion that men prevent themselves, from expressing. These are emotions that have been traditionally associated with femininity, with women, and with weakness, in all like that. And then lastly, it's that the phrase is, just literal, that men should allow themselves to cry. Although men cry many times alone, many times with other males, and generally outside public purview. But this catchphrase says that men should allow themselves to cry, especially in the moments that the emotion presents itself. So rather than withholding and bottling things up, men should allow themselves, give in to the tears. And all of this quite valid and very important. However, this catchphrase, both in its direct and implied meanings, assumes that the problem is a lack of knowledge on the part of men, and assumes that the solution is just to enlighten and instruct men, and then men are going to be like, oh, okay, men should cry, be okay, next time, and that men are just going to take that up and then start becoming emotionally vulnerable. And by many people's reaction, when you tell a man that, or you discuss this with men, and maybe the next time the man defaults back to default states, goes back to default states, some people's reaction seem to be that they think that the men themselves have decided that they will never, or like they've refused to accept the validity of the statement. But I believe that this catchphrase simply tries to solve the problem superficially without dealing with its root cause. Emotional vulnerability, or the lack of it, is deeply rooted in societal stereotypes and gender expectations imposed on boys from a very young age. Male children were raised to bear burdens and fulfill roles upon which the survival of family and society is based. And every time that a young boy, a young man tries to express some of these emotions, especially the ones that are associated with weakness, with failure, and all of that, they are silenced. They quickly learn the opportunity cost for vulnerability and realize that there's no room for that. And this is a lifelong journey, lifelong lesson that many men have had to imbibe. It wasn't palatable, it wasn't easy, but it has defined the lives of many young men. And so it becomes a consequent thing to suppress emotions. And of course, the society is not also alone in that. The society that raised men not to be emotionally vulnerable also raised women not to know what to do with men's emotional vulnerability, right? So the rest of society, men themselves, all of us are interconnected in this. So I'd say that rather than simply demanding emotional vulnerability from men, which oftentimes serves as a reminder that men need fixing, right? Because sometimes the way people say it to men is to say that there's something wrong with you, and when the men don't become emotionally vulnerable as many people expect, then the message we're sending back to them is that your failure to become emotionally vulnerable is also not accepted, and you are not accepted to fail. So you must be strong, which is the same lesson the same scripting, social scripting that has brought us to this point. So rather than simply demanding, emotional vulnerability, I think that we should instead try to understand men, learn about their experiences directly from them, and stop dismissing explanations that men give as mere excuses. We can't change things that we don't understand, and we can't understand outside the people having the experience themselves. So instead, we should try to create an atmosphere that embraces men's emotional vulnerability, and that alone is going to have a significant impact on men. And I'm not advocating that you are the one to fix men. I'm not making an excuse for all the responsibilities that men, do sometimes. I'm simply suggesting that if you have a man in your life, your husband, your father, your friend, your son, that you love and you care about them deeply, and you desire a healthy emotional well-being from them, it would greatly benefit them if you provide them unconditional positive regard and an atmosphere that assures them that whether success or failure, you are for them, you are with them, and you care about them. Ultimately, the solution lies in genuinely caring for the well-being of boys and men. It might not look like a lot, but by letting the men, the boys in your life know that come failure or come success, that they are accepted, that they are valued, that they are appreciated, you will begin to see, we'll begin to see more men begin to embrace emotional vulnerability. By the time that atmosphere tells them that in spite of, this failure, in spite of these weaknesses, that they are valid and they are valued, then we'll begin to see more men, express, become more open. And that means that when you expect vulnerability from men and they do not, yield to that, it's going to take patience. How you respond to that will tell them if their vulnerability or their weakness or their failure to be emotionally vulnerable is going to be accepted, or that there's a chance for them to learn. Or a boy is not emotionally vulnerable, and the reaction is that you don't want to be emotionally vulnerable, and all of that suggests to the man that my weaknesses are not accepted, are not valid, right? By gradually fostering an environment of empathy, validation, understanding, and open communication, we will witness a change in the lives of the men and the boys around us. And I think that if we care enough, if we appreciate and value and love them deeply, then this is not too much a sacrifice to make. So this is to men and all this and the society that loves them. Thank you for listening. This is Conversations with the ImisiOluwa. Thank you for listening. I'm the ImisiOluwa, and I hope that this helps.